Silly season dominoes continue to fall as Chase Briscoe is expected to join Joe Gibbs Racing in 2025. Gene Haas will keep one of the Stewart Haas Racing charters, and Josh Berry could be headed to the Wood Brothers in 2025. What's going on, guys? It's Daniel, and welcome back to our video. We got some NASCAR and other motorsports stories discussed today on the channel. Let's go ahead and just show them trailers really quickly. We're first going to take a look at a couple paint schemes that have been revealed over the course of the last couple days. Let's go ahead and just jump straight into them. The first paint scheme we're taking a look at is Ryan Ellis's 2024 Pella News scheme that we'll see later this year. Very solid looking paint scheme in my opinion. Alpha Prime always does a good job. This one's no exception. It looks very solid. Looking forward to seeing on the racetrack later this year. And the only other paint scheme we're taking a look at is Taylor Gray's 2024 Caden Ingram Patriotic scheme that we are going to see this weekend at National Super Speedway. Very solid looking paint scheme in my opinion. Love the colors of it. I think it looks pretty good. Looking forward to seeing on the racetrack this weekend at National Super Speedway. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Hardy. As it was announced on Friday that Hardy will be given the command for the NASCAR Cup Series race at National Super Speedway. Hardy, who's one of the biggest country singers currently at the moment, has had multiple #1 songs on the country charts and had a big album come out as well very recently with the Mockingbird and the Crow. I think he's going to bring a lot of energy. He's a pretty big NASCAR fan, and I think he'll bring a lot of energy to the race at National Super Speedway. Really excited to see this, and nonetheless glad to see that he'll be given the command for the Cup Series race at National Super Speedway. Really exciting stuff. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about the Spanish Grand Prix. Before you had the IndyCar race and the NASCAR Cup Series race at New Hampshire Motor Speedway, you had the Spanish Grand Prix in Formula One. And early in the race, Lando Norris got a terrible start, and George Russell got the lead early. But eventually, Max Verstappen a little bit later was able to clear for the lead. This race eventually became a battle between Max Verstappen and Lando Norris for the victory, with eventually Max Verstappen holding off a hard-charging Lando Norris to pick up his second straight win in his 61st career Formula One victory. A much more closer battle. It seems like the McLarens and the Mercedes have caught up just a little bit to the Red Bulls, but Red Bulls still continue to dominate along with Max Verstappen. He most likely is going to win the championship early this year, but it's going to be a little later than we had last year. Congratulations once again, though, to Max Verstappen on winning the Spanish Grand Prix. A big win for him, nonetheless. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Josh Bilicki. As it was announced on Thursday that Josh Bilicki will be driving the 66 for MBM Motorsports later this year at the Chicago Street Course. Josh Bilicki is making select starts in the NASCAR Xfinity Series this year for Joe Gibbs Racing and also DGM Racing. I think he's got a one-off start potentially scheduled with Alpha Prime Racing later this season as well. I believe this will be Josh Bilicki's second or third Cup start of the 2024 season, if I'm not mistaken, and it's a solid opportunity. I know the MBM is not the fastest organization in the world, but it's really great to see that another organization will be showing up to the Chicago Street Course. I think he'll do a very solid job. Hopefully he can make the field, those 30 cars schedule. I do think there's going to be more showing up. I hope that Josh Bilicki can have a solid run with MBM Motorsports at the Chicago Street Course. So I think he's very talented, and I think he deserves a chance and opportunity to make more starts in the Cup Series, to be honest with you. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Carson Quaffle. Now, Carson Quaffle competed in the NASCAR Xfinity Series race yesterday at New Hampshire Motor Speedway and crossed the line in 5th position. He did play some strategy to get up front and have a good run, but he got a really strong top 5. I have been very impressed with Carson Quaffle so far this season. I think he's had 3 top 5 finishes so far in 2024. And he's only ran 4 races and has been very impressive in those runs. I think Carson Quaffle should be considered for that car full-time next year in a junior motorsports car. You look how bad Brandon Jones has been performing this year for the most part, and I think he should be full-time, that being Carson. I know Dale Jr. is going to have to make some hard decisions going into 2025 in regards to what his driver lineup is going to be, but if I am Dale Jr., I'm absolutely putting Carson Quaffle behind the wheel because he certainly deserves a chance and opportunity to get behind the wheel to see. I hope he gets a chance and opportunity because he's earned the right to go full-time. He continues to impress, had a shot to win. I hope he's full-time with this team in 2025. And now we're going ahead, jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about the IndyCar race at Laguna Seca. While you had the NASCAR Cup Series race delayed at New Hampshire, the IndyCar race is able to begin at Laguna Seca. And it really was a head-up battle between Kyle Kirkwood and Alex Palou early in the race. I think there was an issue for Joseph Newgarden and somebody near the end of the race, but Alex Palou, no shock or surprise, took advantage, got the race lead, and was able to come off the corner and pick up, I believe, his second victory of the 2024 IndyCar season. Alex Palou is chasing his third IndyCar championship and looking to go back-to-back as well. This, I believe, is his second win at this track. I think he won back at Laguna Seca back in 2022, so he's been very good at this track historically. Congratulations on a fantastic run for him this weekend, and congratulations to Alex Palou on winning the IndyCar race at Laguna Seca. I think he's now the points leader again, so congratulations to him on winning at Laguna Seca. And now we're going ahead, jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about IMSA. As it was announced on Friday that IMSA has signed a multi-year contract extension with NBC. And according to Adam Stern and IMSA themselves, there will be a 50% increase in network coverage. This is absolutely huge. NBC has been the exclusive home of IMSA broadcasts for the IMSA WeatherTech Sports Car Championship since 2019 when they left Fox at the end of the 2018 season, I believe, and they've been with them since 2019. They're going to have more races on broadcast because remember, IndyCar is going to be going to Fox starting in 2025 on a multi-year deal there. And the fact there's going to be a 50% increase on TV races is absolutely huge for IMSA. IMSA's looking to grow. Obviously, NASCAR owns that series. I think this is absolutely huge for them, and it's a big deal for IMSA to continue to grow their branding in this sport and grow in, especially trying to become one of the bigger series. It's been growing. A lot of new manufacturers have been coming in. I think it is really huge to see IMSA continue to grow and get more TV network as well. And it's pretty awesome that they will have an increase in network coverage starting in 2025. And now we're going ahead, jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Frankie Munoz. As it was announced on Wednesday that Frankie Munoz will be driving for the Raymond Brothers Racing part-time in 2024 in 4 select races. He'll run 3 Truck Series races, including at Nashville this weekend, and will run an ARCA race at Michigan as well in the number 33 car. Frankie Munoz made select starts so far in the NASCAR Xfinity Series in the number 35 car this season, but he has only made 3 starts so far. Unfortunately, did not make the race at Portland due to electrical issues and basically having a water pump issue, if I remember correctly, and the other 2 races did not go so well. This is going to be a solid opportunity, and we've seen the Raymond brothers at some decent pace with Wallace Allen this year. And this is a great learning opportunity. Frankie obviously wants to go full-time in a racing series in the future. Ran last year full-time at ARCA, finishing the top 5 in points, and he's looking to grow his experience in this series. Again, a fantastic opportunity. I think he's going to do a decent job in that ARCA race because that 33 car shows some pace and speed with Wallace Allen. I do think that Frankie Munoz is going to do a solid job and a great opportunity to see that he will get the chance and opportunity to drive a couple Truck Series races and an ARCA race as well. Congratulations to him for getting the chance and opportunity to drive with this team in 2024. Really looking forward to it for him. And now we're going ahead, jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Fox and their ARCA broadcast from this past weekend at Mid-Ohio. While you had the NASCAR Cup and Xfinity Series racing at New Hampshire Motor Speedway, you had the ARCA race going on at Mid-Ohio. Now, obviously, NASCAR's coverage on Fox is done for the whole entire year. There's no more Race Hub, and there's obviously no more of the pre-race show anymore as well. So they really doesn't seem like they cared anymore. And their coverage was absolutely, abhorrently abysmal the whole entire race. Terrible camera shots. A remote booth that sounds extremely bland. No focus. They couldn't figure out who was leading at one point. They were showing Connor Mosack, who got a penalty, which is a little questionable if you ask me that he got that penalty. And they were showing the guy who got penalized, and they were focusing on William Sawash, the guy who went on to win the race. So it's extremely controversial. This was one of the worst broadcasts, and maybe the worst broadcast I have ever seen as a fan of motorsports. Fox doesn't care. Say what you want to say about NBC. They're not perfect. But my God, NBC is miles better than Fox right now. Fox is abhorrently garbage and abhorrently bad and they need to make some major changes going forward in 2025 if they want to keep fans interested. There's a reason why ARCA broadcasts are not doing quite well right now. There's a reason why people don't like Fox. There's a reason why NBC's ratings are already up at the start of the year, because people really don't care about Fox. If they cared about their coverage a lot more, I think a lot more people would be happy. They need to get this taken care of. They needed to get it together. Otherwise, fans are going to be upset going forward, including myself, and will continue complaining. Again, like I said, NBC's not perfect, but the ARCA coverage this past weekend was absolutely abysmal and unacceptable for any standards. It was terrible broadcasting, in my honest opinion, for the ARCA race at Mid-Ohio. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Watkins Glen. As it was reported by Jim Utter and other reporters that there is going to be a tire test on Wednesday and Thursday at Watkins Glen International Speedway. For the Cup Series, it'll be Daniel Suarez, it'll be Joey Logano, and Tyler Reddick, all representing their respective manufacturers. For the Xfinity Series, it is going to be Jesse Luff for Chevrolet, Ryan Seek for Ford, and John Hermachek for Toyota, who will be driving the Sam Hunt racing car. This is basically for the new surface they added. Remember, they added, I think, a bus stop or a change to the bus stop, if I remember correctly. We did see it in the Salem 6 Hours of the Glen earlier today. And we will see those changes in effect for the Xfinity Series and the Cup Series race when we do go there for the playoffs, which likely will not be a playoff race in 2025. But this tire test is again a gauge. I think it's going to be closed out to the public. I don't think the public is going to have access to this tire test, unfortunately. Though, like in Indianapolis, we'll probably find a way for people to live in the area. We'll probably find a way to get access to the test. Hopefully this tire test can go very well. There's no wrecks like what happened to Kyle Busch. Hopefully we see it be very smooth, and we can see some pretty smooth transitions at Watkins Glen. And hopefully the racing can also be really good at Watkins Glen when we go there later this year. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Matt DiBenedetto. Now, we already talked about this on the channel about a day or two ago, but it's officially confirmed that Matt DiBenedetto was disqualified at New Hampshire Motor Speedway after crossing the line in 17th position. Now, why was Matt DiBenedetto disqualified? The reason he was DQ'd was because he had 3 loose lug nuts on the rear of the car. Likely 1 or 2 on one side and 1 lug nut on the other side. Probably 1 on the left and 2 on the right. This is the second driver this year that's been penalized and disqualified for loose lug nuts. Cory Heims was also disqualified earlier this year at Charlotte Motor Speedway after crossing the finish line in second place. Very unfortunate for Matt DiBenedetto, who was having a solid run, had some issues at the start of the race due to gearing issues. A tough break for drivers trying to build this team up really, really quickly. It's unknown at this point if they are going to appeal the penalties right now. I don't think they are going to appeal it, to be honest with you, but they could if they wanted to go ahead and appeal it. I feel like going forward, when it comes to this situation, I feel like we maybe could change the rules going forward with the loose lug nuts. Because in the Cup Series, if you have a loose lug nut, your tires are just going to come off. And you basically want to be a bad day for you, and you're potentially going to be not your crew chief, but a couple of your crew members are going to be facing a couple race suspensions. Tough break for Matt DiBenedetto. Again, though, like I said, I don't expect that they will be making any sort of changes to the rule, but I do think they need to change the rule going forward, in my honest opinion. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Hailie Deegan. Now, we're talking about Hailie Deegan because of her 2024 struggles. This past weekend at New Hampshire Motor Speedway, it was a pretty bad race for her. She got involved in a couple incidents and wrecks. She got turned by Mason Massey in turn number 3, if I remember correctly. And unfortunately, Nathan Bird had nowhere to go, and he crashed very, very hard. But we're talking about her struggles. I have defended Hailie Deegan constantly on this channel because I think Hailie Deegan does have a lot of talent. However, she is absolutely doing a terrible job this year. She only has 4 top 20 finishes the whole entire season. And I feel like ever since they fired Joe Williams, her performance has gotten worse. And it's such a shame, right? Because like I said, I want Hailie Deegan to do good. If she does good, it's good for the sport. But we cannot deny that she's been having a bad year. I was not expecting her to set the world on fire, but I was expecting better than this. I've defended her a lot, and I really hope things can get better for her. We do have some decent tracks coming up for her in the future, but honestly, I just don't really have any hope. It's been a wash this year. She's probably ready for the year to be over at this point and probably focus on getting better. She cares. She wants to get better, but it just seems like nothing's working out at the moment, and it's very concerning to see that the struggles that she's having currently at the moment. Again, I really hope she turns it around so she can be in this series a long time. But at this point, man, her future's uncertain for sure. I know she technically has a multi-year deal with AM Racing. She's probably in the running for the Haas factory car. But at this point, you need to focus on getting better because you've not been having a good year. Hopefully she can turn it around. Again, AM Racing's all over the place, but she definitely should be doing better than she is currently at the moment, in my honest opinion. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Kyle Larson. Now, if you watched the NASCAR Cup Series race in New Hampshire Motor Speedway, you saw Kyle Larson and his radio communication with his spotter, Tyler Mont. Near the time before we had the rain delay take place, Denny Hamlin got into the back of Kyle Larson once again and moved him up the racetrack to force him really high, and Kyle Larson lost a lot of track position. Then his spotter, Tyler Mont, came on the radio and basically said, the reason it happens is because you let Denny Hamlin basically run you over. And Kyle Larson then said, shut the F up. Kyle Larson, is no secret, is my favorite Cup Series driver. But Tyler Mont is absolutely right. Denny Hamlin does race Kyle Larson very, very aggressively. And this is not the first time that Denny Hamlin has done things like this to Kyle Larson. Remember, he got into him at Iowa, forced him up the track. Go back to Pocono last year with Denny Hamlin and Kyle Larson had issues. Go back to other races that these two have raced against each other, and Denny has not raced Kyle Larson very, very fairly. At some point, Kyle Larson is going to have to stand up for himself against Denny Hamlin. And I really hope he does because Kyle Larson can't keep getting pushed around by Denny. I know Kyle Larson has had a history of racing people very hard, but it seems like Denny Hamlin is really taking advantage of Kyle at this moment. And like I said, I really hope that we do see him start standing up for himself and doing a lot better on that front, because if he wants to be successful long term and win more races, though Larson's been great this season, he needs to not be letting drivers run him over and he needs to start standing up for himself. Will he? Who knows at this point? But I really hope that Kyle Larson starts standing up for himself and gets into Denny the next time he does it. I really hope he ends up doing it, hopefully. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Cory Heims. As we obviously know that Cory Heims will be making his NASCAR Cup Series debut later this weekend at National Superspeedway. And Denny Hamlin spoke on that about him making his Cup Series debut. He says there's not a lot of expectations for Cory Heims going into this Cup Series debut. And he also talks about the possibility as well of Cory Heims going into this third car full-time in 2025. Cory Heims, like I mentioned, will make his NASCAR Cup Series debut later this weekend, and he has a lot of hype around him. He's already made a couple starts so far this year for Legacy Motor Club, and he's, of course, one of the reserve drivers for 2311. He's also a reserve driver for Legacy Motor Club. He's quintessentially a reserve driver for every team except Joe Gibbs Racing. Cory is an extremely talented driver who always gets the best out of equipment. So far, he has had 4 10 wins in the NASCAR Truck Series this year, and generally has been very impressive throughout the year. And he is the favorite to win the Truck Series Championship. And again, there's a lot of talk and conversation right now that Cory Heims is going to move up to the Cup Series next year. But there's rumors and chatter also that Riley Herbst might be going in his third 2311 racing car. Now, if Legacy is to expand next year, maybe Cory Heims goes there. But if Cory does an exceptional job in his debut, I think he will absolutely be driving for 2311 next year. Again, I think Riley Herbst could also go to a team like the Wood Brothers or Front Row, but we'll talk about the driver who's a frontrunner for that Wood Brothers seat currently at the moment soon. But I'm excited for Cory. I think he's going to do an excellent job, and I'm looking forward to seeing him get the chance and opportunity to make his NASCAR, not debut, but making it his making his first start with 2311 Racing, and hopefully he can do a really, really good job. And hopefully this can lead to him running full-time with 2311 Racing in 2025. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Ryan Blaney and Michael McDowell. Now, if you watched the NASCAR Cup Series race at New Hampshire Motor Speedway, you saw the end of the race. We're going to talk about the wet weather tires here in just a second. But Ryan Blaney and Michael McDowell had contact on the restart with 13 laps to go. Michael McDowell was starting on the front row with Cristobal at the time, and Ryan Blaney, who was actually catching Cristobal on the long run, he was right behind Bell on the restart. Michael McDowell was sent to the bottom of the racetrack, got a really strong run to the inside, but he got loose, went up the racetrack, and got into Ryan Blaney, taking both of them out of contention to go for the win and the race. Ryan Blaney was justifiably upset and frustrated with Michael McDowell, saying that he was making a low percentage move, and that was a bad move on his part. After the Cup Series race, Michael McDowell spoke to Bob Parks. They actually spoke to each other and talked about the incident, which good on Michael McDowell for going up and speaking to him about the wreck and situation. But Michael McDowell said it was his fault. He's trying to be a little more aggressive because he knows he's at this point got to win to make the playoffs, and that was his fault. Ryan Blaney says that apologies don't really fix any situations. He made a low percentage move, and it really didn't work out. Looking at the situation, Ryan Blaney wasn't as pissed off at Michael McDowell. The big reason being is because Ryan Blaney won last week at Iowa Speedway. So he doesn't really have to worry about it as much. Michael McDowell, of course, is being a lot more aggressive, right? Because he knows he's got to be as aggressive as possible if he wants to make the postseason. We've only got 8 races left in the regular season. And McDowell, this was a good chance and opportunity. He had a great run going, and he had to do whatever he could to try to get the win. Again, I think he was over-aggressive, but I don't think this will lead to anything else going forward in the future. But at the same token, same time, he's got to calm down a little bit when he's going for wins. He's not always in these positions. I do hope that he calms down going forward in the future and doesn't make this mistake once again. Do I see him making a mistake like this again in the future? Maybe, because McDowell can sometimes be over-aggressive. I do feel bad for Ryan Blaney, but once again, McDowell was clearly at fault for the wreck, but I'm glad to see that Michael McDowell is taking some responsibility for the incident and wreck, in my honest opinion. And now we'll go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about the new Cup qualifying procedure. As it was announced on Friday afternoon that the Cup Series has a new qualifying procedure going forward. It was reported first, I believe, by Bob Pockers and Jay Ski as well, that the second round, the top 5 go out by order of speed. Group B cars on rows 2, number 5 to the inside, and Group A for 2, number 5 on the outside. 2, 5, and inside for Group B because it's a faster group, and the pole sitter will be the fastest overall in that final round. I really do not understand why we're making qualifying so complicated and turning it into AP calculus. I really don't understand this because the group qualifying system I've not been really a fan of, and I think there need to be changes going forward on this front as well, along with the web other tires we're going to talk about here at the end of the episode. But I think that NASCAR is being way too complicated. I get what they're trying to do here. They're trying to make qualifying a lot more exciting for TV. But in my personal opinion, why are we trying to make qualifying more exciting already is? Qualifying's exciting on its own. Seeing one car try to become the fastest. We used to qualify before we started group qualifying in 2014. We used to qualify normally where the fastest lap, you have 1 or 2 laps to get around the track, and the fastest lap set on the pole. We didn't used to have any of this round stuff. We need to change this format going forward. I think it's overkill, in my opinion, what NASCAR is doing here. They're trying to make everything a show, and like I said, we don't need to be making everything a show. I really hope they change this in the future, and I really hope that we're not doing this where we have multiple rounds of qualifying going forward. This needs to change going into next year because this qualifying format that we have right now is just a little bit overkill if you ask me. Like I said, I really hope they change these formats going forward into 2025. Otherwise, I think fans are going to get tired of it unless people are going to watch practice and qualifying, in my honest opinion. And now we'll go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Martin Truex Jr. Now, we already talked about this on the channel. The Martin Truex Jr. is going to be retiring from full-time NASCAR Cup Series racing at the end of the season. But we also talked about the fact that Martin Truex Jr. could be running part-time with 2311 Racing in 2025. Well, Martin Truex Jr. actually spoke to the media on Saturday about this, and he says he has had discussions with Denny Hamlin to run select races with 2311 in 2025. He says those discussions have just begun because Martin Truex Jr. has stated recently that he wants to run around 10 to 12 races in the 2025 year. It's unclear how many races he will run in the Cup Series, how many run Xfinity in trucks, but I do expect he's going to run a few select NASCAR Xfinity Series races with Joe Gibbs Racing in 2025 because he's going to remain as an ambassador for Joe Gibbs Racing next year. But also, I think he will run the Daytona 500 with 2311. I think he'll run a few races like New Hampshire as well, which we're going to talk about near the end of this episode about that track. But when it comes to Martin Truex Jr. running part-time and Cup, the big thing for me is I'm glad to see that Martin Truex Jr. is not completely moving out of the sport altogether. Many had thought that Martin Truex Jr., when he announced retirement, that he was going to be leaving NASCAR altogether. And the fact that he's going to be sticking around in the sport is absolutely huge in my opinion. So I'm very happy to see he's sticking around. And again, one number I'd like to see him run, I like to see him run the 56. Maybe bring Kurt Busch, Carl Lewis out of retirement to see those guys run. And if Cory doesn't go full-time with 2311, you get him in that seat as well. But Martin Truex Jr. being with 2311 will be really fun to see. And I really hope, like I said, he gets a chance and opportunity to make starts because he's earned a ride and opportunity. He's had a great career in the sport. And again, I really hope we do get to see Martin Truex Jr. driving the seat in 2025 with 2311 Racing. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Ryan Preece. During the rain delay, Ryan Preece is interviewed by Kimmy Kuhn of NBC and was asked about his future in 2025. Basically, he said, quote unquote, he wants to go somewhere where he wants to win races and be very competitive. There's been a lot of chatter and speculation around Ryan Preece's future going into the 2025 season. We know that Stewart Haas Racing, at least that program, though we know Haas factory teams coming in, which we'll talk about near the end of the episode as well. But we know that he is a free agent going into 2025. And many are expecting that Ryan Preece will not be in the Cup Series in 2025 unless he goes to a team like the Wood Brothers, which I think is very unlikely, or if he goes to Front Row next year. So where does he end up going in 2025? Where I think he's going to end up next year, I think is going to be the Haas factory team. Ryan Preece does have a little sponsorship from the United Rentals. I think that's the likely landing spot. If not, I think AM Racing could be a potential possibility. If Haley Degan somehow goes to Haas factory team next year, I also think RSS Racing could be an option, and he could go all the way back down to the Truck Series as well. But I do think that Ryan Preece deserves a top opportunity. Ryan Preece is not a bad driver like some people say. He does get the best out of equipment. He's just not been in the best position. I don't think Chad Johnson is the greatest crew chief in the world either. So I really hope, like I said, he does get the chance and opportunity to drive for a good organization and team going into 2025 because I think he's earned a right and opportunity to get a top-tier seat. Hope he gets the chance. We'll see what ends up happening in 2025. But it sounds like Ryan Preece is working on that going for 2025. We'll see where he ends up going in the 2025 NASCAR Cup Series season. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about the wet weather tires and the damp tires. Now, the wet weather tires were used in the NASCAR Xfinity Series race yesterday, and they were also used in the Cup Series race today. Let's go to the Cup Series race as the main focus. So they actually put these tires on with about 82 laps to go. Initially, we weren't even sure if we're going to be going back racing because of the big weather cloud and weather storm that came in. We weren't sure if the track was going to get dry enough to get these tires on. Luckily, NASCAR decided to wait it out, and they were able to get the tires on. And they were able to, for a little bit, it was very interesting and fun racing at New Hampshire Motor Speedway. We had like 4 or 5 lanes at one point. It was pretty cool to watch. But then we started having spins, and drivers were complaining. And they were asking NASCAR, can we change it? And NASCAR decided to be a little bit of basically overpowering, and they were making decisions for teams. They were telling teams they couldn't change them. They were penalizing drivers and telling them they have to come back down pit road. They were doing unscheduled pit stops, and it was very frustrating to watch. Look, I have to give NASCAR kudos for trying something here to get this race back going, and it's good they got all 300 laps in. But the end of this race was very, very frustrating. And Ellen Sawyer apparently told Bob Pockers that they aren't planning, in the future, they are planning to be a little more hands-off going forward. Again, we've had enough race at this point. We've ran the wet weather tires. We ran them in the Xfinity Series race. We ran them in the Richmond race earlier this year. We ran them in North Wilkesboro. We've had 3 or 4 races now. We've ran wet weather tires on short ovals. At this point, we need to let the gloves off. Let the teams make the decisions. Don't basically mandate what lap you're going to bring them in, and every time you have a caution, don't mandate them all restart where they are. If you want to have non-competitive pit stops because you think it's too dangerous, fine. That is completely understandable. I won't be mad at that. But personally, I think the fact that basically the teams can't dictate what they want to do is honestly so stupid and really, really frustrating to me. And I feel like we should have let the teams have the hands on and let NASCAR be hands off on the situation and let the teams make the decision. Again, I really hope this changes going forward because it did hurt the effect of this race. I thought it was cool when they did it and it made the race better than it was, or I'd still say the race was decent before it. But I really hope going forward when it comes to the wet weather tires, we get a little more hands off from NASCAR and we let the teams make decisions going forward. Not a fan of it personally, the way they handled it. They need to change it going forward, and I really hope they do go ahead and let teams make decisions going forward, to be honest with you. And now we're going ahead, jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Aric Almirola. There's been a lot of chatter around Aric Almirola at Joe Gibbs Racing. It all started around the Charlotte weekend when Aric Almirola was withdrawn from the race at Charlotte Motor Speedway in the 20 car, which he was scheduled at, and Ty Gibbs was the driver who ended up replacing. And Aric Almirola has not been in the 20 car since Darlington Raceway, and a lot of people have been wondering, where's Aric Almirola been? Well, Toby Christie reached out to multiple members from Joe Gibbs Racing, and they have told him that Aric Almirola is still at Joe Gibbs Racing and will be back in the car later this year at Indianapolis Motor Speedway. There's been some crazy rumors going around that I'm really not going to get into, but the rumors that have been going around, I never believed them to begin with. My only theory is that Aric Almirola wanted to spend a lot more time with his family during the summer. I also think that there was some sponsor reshuffling that happened over at Joe Gibbs Racing. Joe Graf Jr. has not made a start so far this year. And remember, Joe Graf Jr. was supposed to make quite a few starts with Joe Gibbs Racing this year. So I'm thinking that with the change of the sponsorship, that's why we're seeing Aric race a lot later in the season. And I'm glad to say that Aric is going to be sticking around with Joe Gibbs Racing this year, because there were rumors he was going to be a potential candidate to take over the 19 at one point. Obviously, of course, that's not happening for 2025. But for Aric Almirola, I'm glad to see he's sticking around. And again, I never really believed the rumors about what ended up happening. And again, I think the big thing is he wants to spend time with his family. I do expect him to run a majority of the rest of the year. We do know he's running Indianapolis according to Toby Christie. We also do know that he's probably going to be running Watkins because of that Gold Bowling sponsorship. Obviously, Gold Bowling has had a big association with Aric Almirola over the years. We do think that he'll be in that car at Watkins Glen. If he's taken out of the seat, though, at Indianapolis and Watkins Glen, then we're going to have more questions to reveal than others. And I really hope if that happens where he's on the car at Indianapolis in about 3 or 4 weeks, we get questions answered. But again, it's good to see that Aric Almirola is still at Joe Gibbs Racing right now. Again, there were huge rumors he was going to be out of the seat. But again, I'm glad once again to see that Aric Almirola is not leaving Joe Gibbs Racing and is still at JGR. My big theory is he wanted to spend more time with his family, and that's the only theory that I think should be going around, in my honest opinion. And now we're going ahead, jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about 2025 NASCAR schedule rumors. Now, if you watched the teardown earlier this evening, you might have heard some potential schedule leaks and Bianchi bombs that were released earlier tonight. So according to Jordan Bianchi, this is also reported on Door Bumper Clear, there are 3 tracks that are going to be going out of the playoffs in 2025 that are in the playoffs currently, and there's going to be 3 tracks that are out of the playoffs that are going to be heading into the playoffs in 2025. We already knew one of these changes that was going to be happening. We already knew that Darlington was going to be going back into the playoffs in 2025. And we knew, if I remember correctly, there was another date that was going out for 2025, as obviously Southern 500 was the cutoff race this year. It will go back into the playoffs in 2025. But the big question is, what are the other 2 dates that are going in and going out? Well, according to Jordan Bianchi, the 2 tracks that are going to be going out in 2025 are Watkins Glen and Homestead Miami Speedway. And now, what tracks are going to be going in? According to Jordan Bianchi, Gateway and Loudon are going to be going into playoffs in 2025. This obviously is a pretty huge change for a lot of reasons. Watkins Glen was in the playoffs this year because of the schedule changes for the Olympics. That's why I think Watkins Glen will not be in the playoffs next year. I think it goes back to its traditional August date. I would think I predicted as well that Watkins Glen was not going to be a playoff date in 2025. So I'm not really shocked by that change. Homestead going out is really disappointing to hear. I love Homestead being in the playoffs. But at the same token, same time, the ratings have been terrible for Homestead when it's not the season finale. According to Jordan Bianchi, the Homestead race is going to be taking place in March, early in the year. And the reason why I think it's going to be early in the year is because there's been rumors and speculation, and Jordan Bianchi reported on this about a month ago, that Homestead is really pushing to get the season finale once again in 2026. We already know that Phoenix is going to be the season finale in 2025. So I think that's why they're pushing, because they're really trying to get the race in 2026. They're looking to make some renovations, and they're looking to make some upgrades. And I think that this change is going to really help those upgrades potentially happen and get the track in good shape. Say what you want to say about Homestead and Phoenix. Phoenix is in a much better position on the renovation side, but the racing's much better at Homestead Miami Speedway. Going to those 2 dates, Loudon does shock me a little bit, to be honest, but I think the weather is going to be a lot better. Generally, the races in September have not had weather issues, so I get why they're making that move. Gateway moving in, for me, I'm a little biased here. I like Gateway going to playoffs. One, I think it's earned an opportunity to at least host a playoff race. One, the crowd always shows up to Gateway. I've been to 2 of the 3 Cup Series races, and the crowd absolutely looks fantastic, and the fans come out in droves. Second reason why I really like this move, the weather, because I live close to the track, the weather generally in September is a lot cooler than it is in June where the race is. But the third reason why I think Gateway's moving in there is because of IndyCar. Remember, the IndyCar schedule came out about a week ago at the same time. The Fox schedule was revealed for IndyCar, and Gateway for the IndyCar race got moved to June 15th. I was starting to think maybe Gateway is going to move to late August. I don't know what round it's going to be for 2025, but I certainly think it's going to be a pretty good change. I hope to be there next year in September. That's going to be very fun. Nonetheless, it's going to be very interesting to see what the rest schedule looks like. We know they're trying to get a race in Mexico City for 2025. We're also expecting that Watkins Glen is out as well. We don't know when those dates are going to be announced. We do know some big changes are coming for 2025, including the possibility of Bowman Gray getting on the schedule. Very interesting to see what happens, but it's very interesting that the playoffs are looking to be shaping up for 2025. Some of that will hopefully be revealed in the not-so-distant future. And now we'll go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Kyle Busch. Now, this is a story I was not able to cover from earlier this week, but there was a lot of talk and chatter about a week or 2 ago that Kyle Busch spoke to the media during Iowa weekend. And he stated that if Joe Gibbs or Rick Hendrick called him to drive for the team, he would absolutely call him. And then a lot of people like myself at one point theorized that Kyle Busch may be going back to Joe Gibbs Racing, but Kyle Busch also revealed in his statement that he will be returning to Richard Childress Racing in 2025. Now, Randall Burnett was on SiriusXM NASCAR Radio on Wednesday, and he says he feels Kyle is very committed to turning the process around and getting the A-team back into shape for 2025, and he's hoping that Kyle Busch is going to be at Richard Childress Racing for at least the next few years. We know Kyle Busch is going to be in the number 8 car at least in 2025, but Kyle Busch could technically be a free agent in 2026. Kyle Busch has been struggling, especially as of late. He has had 3 finishes of 35th or worse in the last 4 races. Finished 35th in New Hampshire, I believe finished 35th at Iowa. But unfortunately, I finished like 20th or 12th at Sonoma. And then at Gateway, he finished 35th in that race. He's been struggling very recently, and pretty much at this point, he is in a must-win situation if he's going to make the playoffs. It's not even the fact about he might even win a race. He might not even make the playoffs at all and might not even finish inside the top 20. It's been a big struggle for Kyle Busch this year. And I think his comments are showing a lot of frustration, right? Because he's been very frustrated with the performance of this team this year. And we all know that Kyle Busch definitely wants to get better and make RCR better. But I think RCR, in a nutshell, is not running very, very good. Now, could Kyle Busch become a free agent at the end of 2025? That certainly could be a possibility, but we know Richard is really hoping that Kyle Busch sticks around. We do know there's rumors of Noah Gragson potentially going over to Richard Childress Racing next year. Obviously, they're going to need a third charter for that to happen, but Kyle Busch, we know as right now, is sticking around. And like I said, I really hope Kyle Busch can stick around and really help build up the RCR program back up to the potential they have, because I think Richard Childress Racing is a better team than what they've been at, especially as of late and recently. Kyle Busch is one of the greatest drivers in the world, but he really hasn't been good the last 2 years. I think if you give Kyle Busch more practice, I think he's going to be better. Because at the start of last year, he was extremely good. 3 wins in the first 15 races and looked like a championship contender. Going into Sonoma Loudon last year in this race, he was 5th in points. This year right now, he's 18th in the standings, technically 16th or 17th right now. He is just not on the mark right now, and he's not on his game right now. And you can definitely tell Kyle Busch is getting frustrated and is not happy with the way RCR is looking at the moment. I really hope they could turn the ship around, but as of right now, Kyle Busch is not leaving. I don't think Rick Hendrick has any place for him to go, right? Because we know all the drivers are set for contract for next year. William Byron set through 2025, and we're expecting William Byron to get a contract extension here very, very soon. So we'll have to wait and see how Kyle Busch ends up doing and see if he can stick around and make the team a lot better. I know Kyle Busch wants the team to get better. I really hope it ends up doing, but we know right now Kyle Busch will be sticking around with RCR at least for the near future. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Josh Berry. As it was reported by Adam Stern yesterday, so actually first go back to a SiriusXM NASCAR Radio interview that Josh Berry had. He spoke to multiple members of SiriusXM NASCAR Radio on Wednesday, and he says that he feels a lot better about his future going into 2025, and we should know where he could be headed in the next few weeks. Josh Berry is also hoping to have Rodney Childers with him in the 2025 season. Now, where could Josh Berry end up heading out to in 2025? Could he be driving for Front Row Motorsports? That could be a possibility. We know Front Row's had conversations at SHR. We know they're not moving into the SHR shop in 2025, but they were looking to go into Stuart Haas Racing shop. Could Front Row acquire Josh Berry? That could certainly be a possibility. However, according to Adam Stern very recently, in an interview that Kevin Harvick had, talking about getting the driver sign he has at Kevin Harvick Incorporated. Kevin Harvick is stated there that Josh Berry reportedly has had conversations about driving a 21 car for the Wood Brothers in 2025. This is a shock, but not really a big surprise. Josh Berry going over the Wood Brothers, I think actually would be a huge upgrade for Josh Berry. And I know people are going to say, well, that 21 car has not been very good. Hear me out. I think that car is a lot better than what we've been seeing from the 21 recently. Harrison Burton, no disrespect, and I know today was a solid run at New Hampshire Motor Speedway, but I don't think that 21 car is as bad as Harrison Burton has made it. The drivers prior to him that drove in that seat, Ryan Blaney made the round of 8 in that car. Matt DiBenedetto in 2020 made the playoffs. And then Paul Menard was very solid as well. Harrison Burton has gotten worse every single year he's been in that car. And it's no secret that they're frustrated for him. As John Wood said, they're not happy with the way things are going on over there. If you bring a package deal of Rodney Childers and Josh Berry over to the Wood Brothers, I think that duo will have a shot at making the playoffs and winning races. They are getting better on a consistent week-by-week basis, and they're looking like championship contenders every single week. And I think they both are doing an exceptional job together this year, that being Josh Berry and Rodney Childers. Coming off finishing third in New Hampshire. They've been really good recently. We're really good at Iowa. They've been really good on the shorter ovals. If he truly goes to the Wood Brothers next year, that being Josh Berry, I think Josh Berry has a very great chance and a strong opportunity to make the playoffs next year. If not, I think he's at least in the top 20 because he's going to win the Rookie of the Year honors more than likely this year. And I think before the end of 2024, I wouldn't be shocked or really surprised if he goes out there and wins a race. He's been doing exceptional this year, been doing an incredible job, and I think going over to Wood Brothers will be a fantastic opportunity for him. If he doesn't end up at the Wood Brothers next year, I think he's going to end up in the front row, number 34 car. We know Cole Custer's the lead candidate for the Haas factory team going next year on the Cup side of things. But if, like I said, Josh Berry has a chance and opportunity to drive for the Wood Brothers, I think, like I said, he'd take the chance and opportunity to go over there. So we'll see what ends up happening going into next season. But like I mentioned and said, Josh Berry is a currently candidate to take over the 21 right now at the moment. I think Riley Hurts would be the other guy to watch out for, but we've talked about it already. He's a candidate for the 67, the 2311 car because of the sponsorship he has from Terrible's company. I think more than likely we're going to see Josh Berry either in the 21 car to 34 car, but it'd be really cool to see him get the chance and opportunity to drive the 21 car. I think he'll run circles around Harrison Burton in 2025 if he truly ends up in the 21 car next season. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the first of two major stories in today's episode as we're talking about the Haas factory team. as it was announced on Thursday that Gene Haas will retain one Stewart-Haas Racing charter in the 2025 season with a new NASCAR Cup Series team called the Haas Factory Team. They will have one Cup Series team in 2025 and two NASCAR Xfinity Series teams going into the 2025 season. Now, according to reports, they will operate out of the Stewart-Haas Racing shop. It was initially reported that Farmer Motorsports was going to be moving into that Stewart-Haas Racing shop in 2025, but it was confirmed from Bob Pockrass on Thursday that they, in fact, will not be moving into the Stewart-Haas Racing shop in 2025. There has been some other notes coming out, but the other big thing is that Joe Custer will be running the operations. Gene Haas stated that he wants to continue promoting Haas automation in NASCAR and doesn't want to leave the sport altogether. Now, at the time, the manufacturer was to be determined, but they are going to be staying with Ford in 2025, and they're looking to add sponsorship going into the 2025 season as well. This is absolutely huge for a lot of reasons. Number one, originally we all thought that the other three charters, because you knew Farmer Motorsports had acquired one of the four Stewart-Haas Racing charters, we had thought those three charters potentially were going to be going to Richard Childress Racing, 2311 Racing, and Trackhouse Racing. But with the team keeping one of those charters going into 2025, that is absolutely huge. Now, they don't have any manufacturer alliances currently at the moment going into 2025, but I could see them either working with Team Penske going into next year or working with another organization like RFK going into 2025. That might be where they end up going. Now, let's talk about some other things to note. It is interesting to see that Gene Haas is keeping his team around. That tells you that Tony Stewart is completely done with NASCAR and is no longer interested in being in the sport, considering Tony's had a lot of frustration with NASCAR in recent years. It does make a lot of sense. Now, we'll talk about the number in a second, what number I think they could run, but who do I think is going to be the driver? Who could be the driver next year? Could it be Ryan Preece? Ryan Preece has been rumored to potentially be staying in the Cup next year, but also could stay in Xfinity. He could be an option. What about Noah Gragson? Well, Noah Gragson is likely going to Rich Schultz Racing potentially next year, so I don't know if that's going to happen. The driver I think is likely going to be driving the car next year in Cup is Cole Custer. Cole Custer is the son of Joe Custer, and there are rumors and speculation that Cole Custer was potentially going to be driving a 34 car for Farmer Motorsports in 2025. Cole Custer has been doing a really good job in the NASCAR Xfinity Series this year, is currently the points leader, hasn't won a race this year yet, but he's been really consistent, has like 12 or 13 top 10s altogether so far this year, and has been super, super consistent. I know he wasn't fantastic in the Cup Series when he was up there originally from 2020 to 2022, but Cole Custer is a very talented driver who has improved drastically since that 2022 season, and I think he's going to do a much better job if he gets this chance and opportunity. Now, the other question is, what number do I think they're going to run? My best guess, the number they're going to run is either 00 or 41. 41 was a Gene Haas number that was brought in when Kurt Busch joined the team in 2014 at SHR, and that number's had a lot of success with Kurt Busch as well, and also Cole Custer. The other is a 00. That is the original number they used in the NASCAR Xfinity Series, and we've seen Jason Loeffler win in that car, and I believe Johnny Sauter also won, maybe in that car as well back in 2005, if I'm not mistaken. But also, that 00's got a lot of history of Cole Custer, who has been very, very successful. There aren't many crew chiefs available or anything like that for their Cup Series program. But the other question is, who's going to be in their Xfinity Series program, and what alliances are they going to have? Because their Xfinity Series program has been successful. Well, we are expecting that Cole Custer, Riley Herbst are going to be in the Cup Series in 2025. So who will be in their Xfinity Series program? Hailie Deegan, potentially. She could be a candidate if she doesn't stay with AM Racing next year. But has she earned the right and opportunity to go there? Probably not. Could Matt DiBenedetto be an opportunity guy? He probably needs sponsorship funding, but Matt DiBenedetto would, in my opinion, do a pretty decent job over there and probably get the best out of equipment. The two drivers, though, that I do believe are going to be over at that team next year are Harrison Burton and Ryan Preece. Harrison Burton brings a lot of funding and sponsorship to the table, and he does have some of those Hunt Brother pizzas and those Kevin Harvick Incorporated connections that I index imaging as well, and they're looking for sponsorship. I think Harrison Burton's going to bring that. And say what you want to say about Harrison Burton. I know he hasn't been great in the Cup Series, but I think he would do an excellent job racing in the NASCAR Xfinity Series. So I think he's going to be the first driver. The other driver is Ryan Preece. I remember hearing this on Door Bumper Clear about a week ago, but there was some chatter and speculation that Ryan Preece would be racing in the NASCAR Xfinity Series next year. Many people believe that Ryan Preece deserves another chance and opportunity, and I think if he goes to the Haas organization next year in Xfinity, I think he would be a championship threat and contender. Both these drivers not only do have talent, but they do have funding backing them as well. And like I mentioned already, they're looking for funding going into 2025. Going back to the Cup program, I don't expect much from them if Cole Custer goes in his seat. I think they'll get a couple top 10s, but with them scaling back to a one-car operation next year, I do think it's going to hurt him. Now, the big question now is where do the other charters go from Stewart Haas Racing? Again, it's most likely that 2311 Racing is going to get one of those charters that could go to either Riley Herbst or Corey Heims driving to see, but most likely Corey Heims or Chandler Smith as well. The other one is Trackhouse Racing. Trackhouse Racing is expected to pick up a charter going to 2025. I do think Shane Van Gisbergen is going to be the driver of that car. Zane Smith's been rumored to be out of the seat at the end of the year and maybe looking for another job, another team to go to in 2025, maybe like Colic perhaps, and SVG is likely going to get the seat. Red Bull's really high on him, obviously Red Bull connection he's had in the past, and I think that he will end up at Trackhouse next year. As for the Haas factory team, it's good to see they're sticking around. Again, I don't expect much going into 2025, but like I said, I do believe this is going to happen. I think Cole Custer gets the Cup right. I think there's some more news that's going to be coming in the not so distant future in regards to this organization. And now we'll go ahead and jump on to the final major story of today's episode as we're talking about Chase Briscoe. Now, we've already talked about the story quite a bit on the channel, but Christopher Bell accidentally spilled the beans on Friday that Chase Briscoe is expected to drive for Joe Gibbs Racing in 2025. It's been rumored that this is going to happen, but the way Christopher Bell revealed by saying whenever Chase gets into the car, the way he revealed it was absolutely funny. Now, Christopher Bell feels really bad about it. Obviously, he swept the weekend, so he probably doesn't feel bad about it as much anymore. But Christopher Bell swept the weekend, and he felt really bad for revealing Chase Briscoe's news. Chase reacted on Friday at the dirt track basically, I haven't really seen anything. Apparently, Christopher texted him, don't check Twitter, don't check your social media because I messed up completely. And then we saw Kyle Larson troll Chase Briscoe and Chase Elliott as well. Kyle Larson put out a tweet, he responded saying he could not wait to get that tweet out very much sooner. And Chase Elliott also responded in the media center on a Saturday before he got in the car after basically starting on the pole. He said that, well, I must be looking for a new job going over to Joe Gibbs Racing. But then he also said Chris Bell just made an honest mistake, an innocent mistake. Now, Joe Gibbs also spoke to the media after the race concluded today, and he basically said that Chris Bell can't really do anything wrong, jokingly. As for the official news announcement, it has been reported that that announcement is expected to be announced on Tuesday, 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, according to report as well. Speaking of the crew chief, we wondered if Richard Boswell was going to be going over there next year. According to Bob Pockers and I believe Jordan Bianchi as well, it sounds like James Small is going to be the crew chief of the number 19. So they're not going to be renumbered to number 18 next year. They're going to keep the number 19. As for the official news on Chase Briscoe going to the 19 and him actually going there next year, I really like this move, right? Because when you look at the free agent market going to 2025, he was really the best option out there. I know Eric Jones had a couple wins, but let's be real and honest right now. Eric Jones, I don't think he would do very well over there at JGR. I know he's been solid at Legacy this year, and he'd probably be a little bit better, but I don't think that he's better than Chase Briscoe currently at the moment. We already talked about Kyle Busch. Kyle Busch has got a contract through 2025. He could go back in 2026 if Denny Hamlin decides to retire, but Chandler Smith is probably going to replace Denny Hamlin going to 2026 when he does retire potentially at the end of next year if Denny Hamlin does in fact decide to retire unless he signs an extension. He had other drivers like Justin Haley could have been available, Noah Gragson, but Noah Gragson wasn't going to be available because he's not a big fan of Toyota. Toyota really doesn't like him right now, and I don't think Noah Gragson would have been an option. Chase Briscoe does bring funding with him. There's no denying that. But Chase Briscoe, in my opinion, has earned the right and opportunity and chance to get behind the wheel of this seat. Look, he's been in really strong in that 14 car. He won that race in 2022. And the last time he ran in championship level of equipment, which was in the Xfinity Series back in 2020, by the way, he won 9 races and made the championship 4. And he's been solid, like I said, at Stewart Haas Racing this year. and I think he really is going to do a good job at Joe Gibbs Racing. Now, unfortunately, with James Small being the crew chief next year, I really don't expect much from Chase Briscoe, unfortunately, next year being like a complete championship threat. But that being said, Chase Briscoe is probably going to be the best he's ever been. He's going to win a few races next year, at least 2 to 3 wins in my opinion, and I think he easily will end up making the round of 8 in 2025. And I expect Chase Briscoe to go out there and win races. And that's a little bit of a driver who's still relatively young coming in, but also someone who is a little older as well. Chase Briscoe will be in his 5th Cup season, and he's been, like I said, doing a great job. And he's got a chance to make the playoffs this year and nearly beat Christopher earlier today at New Hampshire Motor Speedway. Yes, rain weather tires and wet weather tires really helped him get that chance and opportunity, but still, I think Chase Briscoe really has earned a raw opportunity. Again, my expectations are 2 to 3 wins going into 2025. And again, I'm happy for him, and I'm glad to see he will get the chance and opportunity to drive for JHR next year. Let's talk about the rest of the silly season. If Chase Briscoe does in fact go to JHR, what happens with the rest? Well, obviously, we already talked about it, but I have SVG going to Trackhouse full-time in 2025. I expect that to happen next season. I also do expect that we will see Cory Heims in a third 2311 racing car, but Riley Herbst could also go there. We already talked about Josh Berry. He potentially be going to front row or the Wood Brothers next year. Noah Gragson, like I've already mentioned multiple times, is rumored to a third RCR car. There have been rumors, speculation, despite the fact that Austin Dillon signed a multi-year extension. Many are starting to believe that Austin Dillon could actually retire at the end of this year, which I don't think would be the best look for Austin Dillon. Could go in a management role going to 2025. That could end up happening next season. There's also, of course, the possibility of other teams like Junior Motorsports making the jump up the Cup, but they're obviously likely going to need a charter, and Dale Jr. has stated recently to Bob Pockers that he's not looking to get a charter. RFK is now, as of now, looking to expand. They could run a Stage 60 car a little bit more going to 2025. That certainly could be an option and possibility. Bubba Wallace is expected to sign a multi-year contract extension with 2311 in the not-so-distant future. I wouldn't be surprised or shocked if it happens in the next week or so. I do think that he'll be announcing that here very, very soon. But going back and talking about Chase Briscoe once again, it's a great opportunity for Chase. I do truly believe that Chase Briscoe is going to do a very solid and excellent job in that ride and C, and I cannot wait for him to get the chance and opportunity to drive for Joe Gibbs Racing. It's great that someone's earned a ride and opportunity. He's going to be the next driver after Mark Truex Jr., who, of course, retired after basically taking over for Daniel Suarez. I think that Chase Briscoe is going to do a solid job, and I think he's going to do a fantastic job at Joe Gibbs Racing in 2025. Looking forward to seeing him get the chance and opportunity to drive for JGR. The official announcement is going to be on Tuesday. So, that is going to be today's NASCAR news and motorsports news video. I want to thank you guys for watching. Please subscribe to the channel, notifications on, so if I win a video, it does go live on my channel. Follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and support my Patreon as well. Links go below that. Comment your thoughts below on today's episode. What are your thoughts about Chase Briscoe going to the 19? Let me your thoughts in the comments below. And what are your thoughts about the Haas factory team? Let me your thoughts in the comments below. Tomorrow on the channel, we'll have a NASCAR silly season update discussing all the silly season rumors and rumblings. We're probably going to have a Chase Briscoe breaking news video potentially dropping as well. And we got a lot of great content dropping this week as we head out to Nashville. We're also going to have the Truck Series race picks dropping as well tomorrow. So anyways, like I said, I want to thank you guys for watching today's episode, and I'll see you guys next time for more great, awesome NASCAR content and other motorsports content on the channel like this. Take care, everybody.